If you're loving the look of our Petal Drawstring Bag, stick around. Martyn is here to guide you step by step through the entire creation process.
Today we're going to look at making this simple little petal drawstring bag. We're going to load our hoop with a light cutaway. We're using our light as a feather cutaway. You don't need a very heavy cutaway for this project because you want the petals to form, and the top edge of the bag is going to be drawn up with a rope or drawstring. Again, we've placed our stitching line on our stabilizer. Then we're going to place some batting over top of the stabilizer. Batting again could be optional. It could just be something very, very thin. We've trimmed this back to 1 to 2 millimeters around the edge of the batting. Now we're placing the placement line for the first piece of fabric. Make sure those edges of the fabric carry on out past the batting or positioning line so as that you've got something to stitch together when we're assembling the project. Trim that out, and then we're going to do a little bit of embroidery on this, which is actually a quilting type design. Right, with placement line for our next piece of fabric. Just wanted to make that a little bit darker for you could see what I was doing. Now a piece of fabric on top of that.
I really hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. This design is part of our latest Keeping It Simple sew along. If you'd like to join in on the fun, I'll leave a link to our Facebook group below. It's a vibrant community where we run monthly competitions featuring our top quality in the hoop designs. Plus, you can grab a 30% discount code for this design right in that group.
So we've trimmed that back 1 to 2 millimeters away from the stitching line, and now we're actually doing our quilting stitching on top of the piece of fabric. Placement line for fabric number 3, or fabric C. Trim that curved edge back, and then do our quilting. Now you'll see that the quilting and the stitching has come off the edge of our batting. That's because we have another piece of fabric to add on, and that batting has been cut short so as we can create a nice clean fold for the drawstring of drawing up this little petal leaf top edge. Don't be concerned that you've not got batting. Well, that was a close call. Now we're just going to do our satin stitch around the edge of our raw seams that have been trimmed back. This is quite fancy. It's got another stitch over top of the satin stitch to give it a different look. Right, so we have those done, and now we're going to place our top or bottom, whatever you're looking at. It's actually a top fabric, but it's at the bottom of the hoop. It needs to come over 1/4 of an inch, 6 mils past our last row of stitching. That's why I moved it down slightly. Got plenty of fabric there. And this technique is called flip and fold. This is going to be the underside of the petal. Now let's remove this and take our pins out of our hoop. We've got the pins in there to keep the stabilizer taut. Let's trim back our straight lines. I'm going to mark on my 1/2 inch seam around the edge of that. So I'm using ruler which is called a quarter plus ruler. It's for doing half square or triangles, but it's very handy because it's exactly ½ inch wide. And so drawing a line for you to trim just makes it more accurate. You can do it by eye. I like to do it so as it's exactly ½ inch. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces for the outside plus a base.
If you're ready to get your hands on the Petal Drawstring Bag, head over to our newly upgraded website, swpea.com, where you'll find this design and a stunning collection of other in-the-hoop bags just waiting for you.
This is just, we're going to do a lining. Now, the lining is created actually in the hoop for this particular project, which is quite unusual for us. We've got a very lightweight see-through cutaway for this project there. You could use a tearaway and just tear it away at the end of doing this shape. Had very little fabric to actually play with on this design. I had a fat quarter and then I realised that someone had already cut something out of it, so I had to be a bit sparing. This has got a little bit of stippling on it, just to give it some interest, because that's going to be the show side of the petal. Okay, there's our 4 pieces trimmed up. Right. Now we have to make each side separately because we want to do the top petal piece first, but we need to know where to start and stop our sewing. So we actually have a line which we have stitched in when we were doing our placement lines originally on the stabilizer, and those are going to be our nicks of where we're going to start and stop for actually creating that top petal. Okay, so that's the petal that's going to be drawn up. So let's place this on top of each other. So we've got right sides together, lining on top of the outside panel. Let's just get some clips and hold that into position. Right, see how this is fitting at the top there. It's probably a little bit high. Let's push that down a bit. Probably could come down a couple of millimeters. Seam on seam, pop your clip in. And let's just use some scissors. Let's just snip into that marking line. So it's a continuation of that line. Just snip that. What we're going to do is then we're going to undo this and we're going to transfer those little clips onto all the other pieces, because we need to actually do this in a particular way. So transfer those little nicks across. So show you where they are. They're there. There and there. So let's pin those nicks together, so right sides together, lining on top of the joined panel. So we're going to do this 4 times because we've got 4 sides of the box, or the 4 sides of the little bag. Let's put a couple more pins in. So we're going to start and stop at this notch, so we're going to actually have to reverse stitch. So we will start actually at the point, come a couple stitches down, then reverse 3 stitches, and carry on, and then we're sewing just inside onto the left hand side of the exterior perimeter stitching line. That will give us a nice shape. Just follow the inside. You could go on top, but generally go a needle width on the inside, and stop on that neck, reverse, and then we are clear on both sides. That's exactly what we want. So then we want to trim back to a shy 1/4 inch. So when I say it's 6 millimeters, it's not. It's probably about 4.5 millimeters, or somewhere between an 1/8 and 1/4 inch, which is 3/16. So we just want to just trim that back. I'm not going to clip into the top curve. I don't think you need to. It's not that curvy. What I generally do is actually generally give it a press and roll it out with my fingers. Then that gives you a framed edge and you don't get any silhouettes of any little dovetail trims. So we want to press that. Don't go past your line though. And we're going to make 4 of them. See, so that will be all joined up together, and that will be the little petal with this underside. Let's go to a bit of a bigger work surface after we've done the 4. Let's go to the, let's go to putting this together first. Then we're going to create 2 pairs. So let's push that through so it's inside out. Again, push that through so it's inside out. Have them so as where linings flipped up. And we're going to put them on top of each other. We need to match that fold seam, the intersection of the satin stitch and that bottom corner. So let's get that bottom corner lined up and put a pin into it. Now let's just have a look to see where our satin stitch is. Put a pin into that, and that top, that's fold on top of fold, neck on top of neck, and we want to start and stop there. So we're not going to sew the seam along the edge all in one, we're going to sew it in 2 sections. Now we're going to bring that petal flap back, bring those down, okay, so they're pointed towards where we've pinned, and then we're going to match the top of the lining there, and we're just going to match, put one more pin in, there we go. So we're going to sew from the top there down to our fold, and we're going to be reversing, but we're not going any further than our seam allowance at the top or to that neck. We're not going any further. Let's get closer. So we're going to be starting on the seam, so it's inside the perimeter stitching line that we've already got there. We're not going to stitch back into the seam allowance there. Stop. And then we don't want to go past that seam, stitching on the inside of the perimeter stitching line, and we're going to stop at the neck. And then reverse back, trim, and then we're going to push those petals up to the top, both top and under, and then we're going to start again and start that seam again. So it's not continuous, it's in 2 sections. Whoops, I've stitched over a pin. And we're reversing to that neck. Make sure we've got our satin stitch matched. Let's sew over that. And then we're going to sew to the bottom seam allowance and no further. We don't want to go into the seam allowance. We're going to finish at that stitching so as those seams are free at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to iron the seam up. So we've pushed those petals down. You'll see how this looks. Right. Now, grab that corner, pinch it, and I say rip it, but you're not ripping it, you're pinching it and twisting it. It makes a nice clean corner when you do that. Everyone's always a bit scared to do it there, but it makes a nice, crisp, clean corner and you don't get any puckering. So those will be folded over just above that fold line. And you've got a little V-split there, which you want. Don't fold it on the line, fold it above the line. And we'll just be stitching through all those to actually make a little channel for our rope to go through, for our drawstring. So it doesn't really matter how big it is, it's up to you, whether it's half an inch or whether it's 3/4 of an inch or even an inch. It's up to you how big your drawstring is going to be. So that's what we'll do that. That's our last step once it's all together. So we've got a pair of those made. We want to make another pair, and then we will join the pairs. So open those seams up and give that a nice steam, and that's ready for the next section. So here we are. We've done 2 pairs. Now we want to join these together, our last 2 seams. So we've got that seam and the other seam on the other side. Let's turn them through just like we've just done, but instead of working on opposing sides, we're working on opposing ends. So again, panel to the board, flip up the lining, seam on seam, and we're going to stitch down in 2 sections like we've just done. Same, and we're going to stitch down in 2 sections, stopping short of the seam allowances. Right, this is the bottom of our lining piece. So I have marked our corners with a disappearing marker. So this is a water soluble marker. That's my 1/2 inch ruler. So I've just marked across here so I know where I'm going to be. Now I've also marked a gap, which is around about 4 inches, to pull the work through. Mark it as much as you possible. The gap needs to be as big as possible. I've done 4 inches, but it's a bit shy. So that's how it's being sewn on. Let's have a look and see how we've done it here. So the cross here matches on that seam intersection, which is free. So we match that up, put a pin in. Right. And then just put a pin of where we're going to be leaving a gap for... I start with a seam because it's the easiest one to get out of the way. Just make sure that that cross here sits on that seam. I can feel it with my thumb. So we're just going to sew there and there, leaving that gap open for us to actually turn our work through once that's all joined. Because once these are joined to the bottom of the lining, then that's the only way of getting the work turned inside out. So let's lay everything flat. Feel with your finger, and we're going to slide the needle on the side of that seam. All the seams being pushed to one direction towards the top, so you'll feel a step. Reverse for that first few stitches, and then come down to our marker line and reverse there too, and that's our gap we're going to leave to pull through. Let's start at the gap on the other side again. 1/2 inch seam, and we're going to finish at that seam allowance intersection. That seam, that's that seam on the, and you'll see when I lift it up, see we're just there now. Let's just turn our work, and again start on the other side and stitch back to that seam. And where that cross finishes, it finishes exactly on the seam. So again, turn and pivot. You can pin this all into place if you want. My lining feels a little bit full, but it's okay. And our last section, so that we're going to start here and then we just pull that flat, and it's already sewn at the end because that we're coming to seam number 4. That's already stitched. And there we have our seams joined. 1, 2, 3, 4 with an opening on the left hand side there. And then we've got the same with the back, with the base. Let's pull our hand through and pull it out. Now it's a bit of a wrestle because I've left only 4 inches, so it's a bit of a wrestle, I'll admit that. You can have it a little bit. It's not impossible to do though, that's for real. We've used, I think, the 6x6 blocks for this. I think it's 6x6. So just be patient, it will happen. Got a lot happening inside this bag. There we go. Push that through. And you'll need to join that with that seam, follow the notes and finish that seam up at the bottom of the lining. We just top stitch it close, edge stitch it close. Push that down into our little box. Okay, corner to corner. Push those corners out. A bit of a steam and a bit of a press. So there we go. Could be a silly hat if you put it up the other way. And we've just top stitched. You can see we've just turned those edges over. Those petals over, and we've just stitched through all layers with a matching thread front and back. I think I've done mine 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch because I'm using cord. So I'm going to thread through. I'm going to thread this cord through all 4 sides and bring the other end out so as it matches where we started. Then I'm going to reverse on it to do a double pull. Okay. I'm being a bit shy with the cord because I don't want it to be huge. And there you've got 2 lots of cords, and one end on one diagonal corner, one end on the other. Then we pull those and it drawstrings up. Now I've got batting in the top of mine, so therefore it's a bit crunchy and a bit thick looking, but it's a nice little bag. You don't have to use batting, and there we have, it's finished, our Petal Drawstring Bag.
Well, thank you, Martyn, for demonstrating how to make this beautiful drawstring bag. And to everyone tuning in, I hope you found this tutorial insightful and are now admiring your very own Petal Drawstring Bag. Enjoy this month's K.I.S.S project, and I'll see you again soon. Don't forget to share your creations in our Facebook group. Goodbye for now.